Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great start to your day. We have just a few more people joining, so once everybody pops on, we'll get started. If everyone who is on can do me a favor and just open up your chat function, let me know you can hear me. Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you can let me know you can see, oh, I should probably start the screen on the first slide, not the last one. There we go. Let me know you can see the screen. Perfect. Thank you, Sergio. All right, we've got two more people who have signed up. I'm just going to give them another minute or two to pop on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. While we're waiting, I'm curious, where is everyone at right now in the world? Arizona, Bay Area, awesome. Hope you're doing well out there. Smoke hopefully has cleared up a little bit. LA, awesome, cool. Shannon, yay, Vegas. Air's getting better, good. For those of you who don't know, I am based in Las Vegas. Oh, it's your hometown, Sergio. Awesome. Okay, if they pop in, they pop in. Otherwise, we are going to go ahead and get started. Try to put this where I can see if they come in. Okay. Well, welcome to Business of Wine. I appreciate you all joining me today. Today is a relatively beginner course when it comes to business of wine. There are quite a few things that we are not going to touch on today. I'm actually in the works of trying to figure out how to make like a 201 version of this where we get even more in depth. But I just want this to be an overall basics of business of wine. And a big part of my designing this course a few years ago was to help students who were sitting for the Court of Master Sommelier exams pass the business of wine portion, because that tends to be relatively hard for a lot of people, especially if you haven't ran a program already of your own. It's not really something that you just learn. You tend to kind of get thrown into it, and you learn as you go. So, hopefully, with this class, for those of you who aren't already sommeliers or aren't already running a program, you will have kind of an idea of some of the things that you need to know before starting to run your own programs, if that is something that you're desiring to do. So, thank you again so much for joining me. I think this is our fifth class since the launch. I appreciate your support and your thirst for knowledge. There are quite a few things today that are going to need your participation, so I'd recommend getting a pen and paper or whatever you use to take notes. Also, a calculator. We're not doing any intense math by any means. It can just be the calculator on your phone, but a calculator would be beneficial for you to have today. Also, while everyone's getting paper and calculators, I do have everyone muted and you're not unable or you are unable to unmute yourself. If you prefer to ask questions verbally, we can do that at the very end of the session. However, please feel free to ask questions as I'm going. If there's something I say that maybe doesn't make sense or you just need a little bit more clarification, I'll be monitoring the chat as I'm teaching. So just feel free to write any questions you have in there. If it's something that's not really pertaining to what I'm doing, I'll skip it and we can address it at the very end. But if it's something that's pertaining to what we're directly talking about, I'll answer it as we go. There are no stupid questions, so please feel free to ask any questions that come up as we go through. Again, if it's something that doesn't pertain, I'll just bring it to the end in the actual questions portion of today. Today does tend to run slightly over depending on how many questions we get. I've taught this class, I don't know, maybe 10 times or so now, and it often goes maybe 10 minutes over. So I'm going to do my best to keep everybody on time, but just a heads up. So this is a live recording. That is the biggest reason why I have everyone on mute, so that when people go back to watch this, they solely focus on the screen with the details as well as just hearing and seeing my voice. I guess you can't see a voice, so just hearing my voice. If you are wanting to re-watch this, it is being recorded, of course, and it will be uploaded to the website. Typically, I upload it within a couple weeks of the live course. It's not going to go up right away. I have to do editing and things like that, so it takes just a little bit of time. And this is a sommelier workshop. So if you have the industry plan, you will have access to the recording of this program. And I'll talk about what the basic plan and the industry plan is. I apologize, on the screen it says the basic plan and industry plan will have access to this recording. That is a typo. I forgot to take that off. It is just the industry plan members who will have access to the recording of this class. So today we are going to talk about quite a few things. First, the role of the sommelier, how the sommelier has to manage expectations throughout all aspects of their position, inventory management, abbreviations, pricing and profitability, wine lists, auctions, and problem solving, plus a few little final notes from me to you. So let's break into the role of the sommelier. I'm going to try not to spend too much time on this. A good sommelier is a sommelier who runs a profitable program. A great sommelier is a sommelier who runs a profitable program as well as provides excellent customer service and hospitality to their guests, to their peers, to their staff, to the back of the house, anyone that they come in contact with. A sommelier is really a jack of all trades, and I'm dealing with this quite a bit now that sommeliers are becoming more of a well-known thing because of the amazing movies that have come out. The amazing movies really focus on all of the glamorous side of what a sommelier is rather than the main part of what we really do. Being on the floor and dealing with customers, of course, is amazing, and selling wine and tasting wine is great, but it is really not the majority of what a sommelier does. That's what we spend, 4 or 5 hours a night doing rather than all of the back of the house stuff, which we're going to talk about today. So a sommelier is a jack of all trades. The sommelier is more than likely the most credentialed and the most educated person on the floor. Sometimes management is an exception to that, but to be a sommelier in most places in the world, you have to have credentials. And as most of you know who are going through the process of earning these credentials, it is no easy feat. So, because of that, you as a sommelier should be able to do every position in the front of the house. There are some days where you're not going to sell much wine and you need to step in and be there as an expo, as a food runner, as a hostess, as a manager, all these other things that could be happening. So something I am running across a lot now, with people who don't have much restaurant experience, seeing these movies that glamorize what a sommelier is, they just want to go hop right in and become a sommelier. And it really doesn't work like that. A sommelier should have already performed every front of the house position before becoming a sommelier. So, I mean, ideally, that would be how it is. So, on top of having a profitable program, being able to do every position in the front of the house, you're also juggling so many things at once. So, you're juggling all of the tables that you have, all of the different wines that they are drinking, making sure everybody is drinking what is suitable for them, whether they're doing pairings for their cuisine, they're doing just whatever they enjoy drinking, people by the glass that you're focusing on, things along those lines. Another big thing about sommeliers that um, I kind of get a little bit on a soapbox about is my goal as a sommelier. I'm not technically a working sommelier anymore. Now I'm an educator of sommeliers. I was a sommelier on the Las Vegas Strip for about 8 years, and have been off the floor for about 4 years now teaching. But one of my biggest things is, even in movies and shows and cartoons, the sommelier is always the person who is like the stuck up, um, not so nice person. And that's a, a stigmatism that I would like to break. And if I can start one person at a time, one class at a time, to just, wine is fun. It's grape juice with booze in it. It's fun. It shouldn't be stuck up. It shouldn't be, this over exaggerated thing. It should be something that we can all just enjoy, whether someone is drinking, a $5 glass of wine or they're drinking a $5,000 bottle of wine. There should always be the same respect, rapport, humility that comes from the sommelier. So I have that picture on the top left here: humility, persistence, vision, competence, judgment, and integrity. And I think this picture really does a lot and says a lot to what a sommelier is. It's easy for us to be judged as sommeliers, or as sommeliers to judge our customers. And this is where my hope and my wish of, one person by one person, bringing the sommelier reputation into a friendly, fun person who's really just there to enhance the guest experience rather than, jack them for all their money or something along those lines, is my goal, will be my life goal, to slowly bring our position into a position that is excited about from our guests, rather than maybe people who are afraid for a sommelier to come to their table. So, off my soapbox, all these expectations that I was talking about that must be managed by a sommelier is threefold, if not more than that. So, again, a good sommelier can manage the visions of their investors while also satisfying desires of their customers. And that's not the easiest thing to do by any means. Um, Investors and owners, of course, are looking to have a profitable business that fits their vision. And sometimes investors' visions don't quite go with the theme of the restaurant or the customers, the clientele that comes in, things along those lines. So you have to help manage their visions and their expectations and still make sure that they're happy and satisfied and you're making them money. There's customers' expectations of feeling that they're valued in the restaurant as well as finding value in that restaurant. So making sure your pricing makes sense for your clientele, making sure your list is approachable, things along those lines. And then sommeliers also need to manage their own expectations of sharing their knowledge and their excitement of wine, of course, in a hospitable way. Some we'll get into wine lists kind of later, but some lists. Um, I walked into a restaurant not too long ago, actually. It was a little bit before COVID happened. And granted, I'm not a know-it-all. I don't know all the wines. I've been in the business for over 15 years. I passed the master sommelier exam back in 2018. Granted, some stuff happened in 2018, so I can't use my title, but I feel like I have a relatively good amount of knowledge. And I walked into a restaurant and I literally did not know one single thing that was on their wine list. And I was like, wow, I can't even imagine how people who know nothing about wine must feel in this restaurant. So you have to manage the clientele's expectations as well as your own expectations of selling fun things versus things that the customer is looking for. So let's go into inventory management. There is a bunch of abbreviations that are used once you get into the world of wine and running programs. And here are just a touch of them, but we will cover them all today. First is POS, which means point of sale. COGS is cost of goods sold. This is an abbreviation and a term that gets misused quite often. So I'll talk about that in quite a bit of detail. Beverage cost percentage or profit margin percentage is something that we'll really break into as well. The cost of goods sold as well as the beverage cost percentage are really, really crucial in understanding how to price things for your menu. BTG means by the glass, BTB means by the bottle, PMix means a product mix. We're going to break into each one of these things one by one. So POS, point of sale, is basically a program that streamlines order taking. It'll expedite communication from the restaurant to the server to the customer to the kitchen, the whole works. It also helps improve accuracy because you don't have the human object. I mean, of course, you have a bit of a human object involved in it, but you don't have quite so much the margin of error that humans provide that machines luckily are great about. And it will also help you create reports based on your sales. These are just a few point of sale management systems that are relatively popular throughout the United States. I can't speak for outside of the United States, but quite popular throughout the United States. And there's many, many more than this. These are just probably the top ones that you've heard of or might know of. Vero, Aloha, Micro, Spinwise, Toast, Breadcrumb, things along those lines. So COGS, cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is a term that gets misused quite often. There's no teaching this to be used correctly. Some people are still going to use cost of goods sold as a percentage point of how their sales work, but I'm going to teach you the correct way, and hopefully one by one we can all start using this the correct way. So cost of goods sold is directly that. It is a dollar amount that represents the amount of product that you have sold. So there's a very simple equation to figure out your cost of goods sold. You might want to write this down. I will have it on the screens going forward when we go through some examples, but just for your own knowledge, it might be nice to write it down to remember. So you take your beginning inventory. We'll just use the month of September, for instance. You add your purchases that you made for the same month. You add it to your inventory, And then at the end of the month, when you count your inventory, you are going to subtract that number, and that equals your cost of goods sold. Let's put this into a bit of an equation where it makes a little bit more sense. So in September, you started with an inventory of $25,000. The final inventory for the month of September is $27,000, and you made $15,000 worth of purchases. What is your cost of goods sold? So we break this into our simple math equation. Our beginning inventory, as it shows here, is $25,000. Our purchases are $15,000. Our inventory is $27,000. Now that we have plugged in all of our figures, we do the simple math: 25,000 plus 15,000 minus 27,000 equals $13,000 worth of product that we sold for the month of September. That is your cost of goods sold. Again, a lot of people will talk about this as a percentage, which we will talk about next in the beverage cost percentage formula. But when you take an accounting class, a basic business class, this is how you are going to learn what cost of goods sold is. So, unfortunately, we will never have these beautiful round numbers in a real world experience. So I'm going to give you a second example. I would like you all to put this into the formula and type into the chat function what your cost of goods sold are. So in September, you started with an inventory of just over $104,000. Your final inventory for the month of September is just under $130,000. You made roughly $63,500 worth of purchases. What is the cost of goods sold? So here is your equation. Go ahead and plug everything in and type into your chat what your final cost of goods sold number is, and then we will walk through it together. All right, so we are going to plug in our numbers. Our beginning inventory is 104,569.81. Our purchases are 63,422.12. Our ending inventory is 129,432.91. When we plug that all in, everyone's cost of goods sold should be $38,559.02. So cost of goods sold, again, is just a very simple plus minus equals equation. Now we are going to go into beverage cost percentage, also known as profit margin percentage. So either BCP or PMP, it just depends on where you are in the world, what terminology you tend to use. But you have to have your cost of goods sold figure in order to figure out what the beverage cost percentage is. So again, here we have another relatively basic math equation. We're going to take our cost of goods sold. We're going to divide that number by our sales for the month. Then we're going to multiply that by 100 to make it into a percentage. So just as some standard markups, If your bottle costs $10, your sale price is $40. We know our formula to get our beverage cost percentage is our cost of goods sold, which is $10, divided by our sales, which is $40. That gets us 0.25. We want to turn that into a percentage, so we're going to multiply it by 100, which gives us a 25% beverage cost percentage, or a 4-time markup. And the reason why I say 4-time markup is 25 times 4 is 100, or it takes 4 25 percentages to make 100%. A 4-time markup is very common for by the glass programs. If our bottle costs $10 and we sell that bottle for $30, when we plug into our formula, 10 divided by 30 equals 0.33, multiply that by 100 to turn it into a percentage, we have 33.3% beverage cost percentage, which is a 3-time markup. This is relatively common for higher end restaurants. Some restaurants, do a 3.2, 3.3, 3.5 markup. But roughly a 3-time markup is pretty common for higher end restaurants. If we want to have a 2-time markup, we're going to sell that bottle that costs us $10 for $20, because 10 divided by 20 equals 0.5. Multiply that by 100 to turn it into a percentage equals 50% beverage cost percentage. Again, it takes 2 50% to make 100%, so it is a 2-time markup. This is relatively common in neighborhood restaurants. And then if we have a bottle cost for $10, we sell it for $14. Putting that into our math gives us a 71.4% beverage cost percentage, or a 1.4-time markup. This is common for retail. I recommend taking a little picture of this if you would like. Make it easier for you than to have to write all of this down. These are relatively standard markups throughout the US. All right, so let's start doing a little bit more math. There's going to be a lot of math today. So you purchased a bottle for $10. You sell it on your wine list for $40. What is your beverage cost percentage? So let's plug this into the formula. 10 divided by 40 is 0.25. 0.25 times 100 to turn that decimal into a percentage is 25% beverage cost percentage. Now let's break this down into a question that might be seen on an exam or in an exam type environment, or if you are actually working in a restaurant. In September, you started with an inventory of $75,000. The final inventory for September is $50,000. You made $25,000 worth of purchases and sold $150,000. What is your cost of goods sold? And what is your beverage cost percentage? So we need to figure out what our cost of goods sold is before we can figure out what our beverage cost percentage is. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes. Go ahead and plug in your numbers and figure out what your cost of goods sold is. Once you have that number, just go ahead and type it into the chat function so I know you are ready. All right, I see a couple people have privately sent me the number. Thank you for that. So yes, cost of goods sold. Our beginning inventory is $75,000. Our purchases are $25,000. Our ending inventory is $50,000. So your cost of goods sold is $50,000. Now that we have our cost of goods sold, we can input that into our beverage cost percentage equation. So our $50,000 cost of goods sold divided by our sales, which we know is $150,000, is 0.3333. Multiply that by 100 to get our percentage. Our beverage cost percentage is 33.3%. And again, we don't have these lovely round numbers, unfortunately, in our world of actually running a program. So this is going to be a little bit more similar to what a more logical question is going to show. So in September, you start with an inventory of $87,450.35. Our final inventory for the month is $73,066.35. We made $27,985.75 worth of purchases, and we sold $125,508.50. What is our cost of goods sold and what is our beverage cost percentage? I'm going to give you another minute. Feel free to message me privately if you have your numbers ready to go. Go ahead and plug the numbers into the formula and figure out what your cost of goods sold and your beverage cost percentage is for the month of September for this well done program. Let's start plugging our numbers in. So beginning inventory plus our purchases minus our inventory equals our cost of goods sold, which you should have got $42,000, $369.75. We plug that number into our beverage cost percentage, divide it by our sales, which gets us 0.3376. Multiply that by 100 to get our percentage, and we have a 33.8% beverage cost percentage. Now, this is a relatively easy focus for this. Once you actually start taking the advanced and master's exams or start running a program, unfortunately, it's not quite so easy as this. We get quite a bit more difficult questions, but we're still going to do the same exact steps. So this is a more realistic example. You are offering a $50 wine pairing for a 5-course tasting menu. Assuming a 750 milliliter bottle and 3-ounce pour per course, what is the average cost for each bottle if you need to run a 25% beverage cost percentage? Now, this isn't that much different than what we just talked about. There's just a lot more words and a lot more going on. So this is when people tend to start to freeze up or get nervous or feel like that they can't answer the question. So we're going to break this down together step by step. So our first step that we need to do is we need to find out how many ounces are poured for the entire pairing. The way we do that is we multiply the number of courses by the ounces poured. So we know this is a 5-course tasting menu. So we have 5 courses. Each course gets a 3-ounce pour. So 5 courses times 3 ounces is going to give us a total of 15 total ounces per course. Now that we know the amount of ounces that we need for one pairing, we now need to determine what our cost of goods sold for each one pairing will be. The way we do that, we've already talked about, is our sale price divided by 1 over our beverage cost percentage, because we need to turn that from a percentage into a decimal point for ease of math. And that is going to get our cost of goods sold. So our sale price divided, which is $50, divided by our 1 over our beverage cost percentage. We've been dictated, we need to run a 25% beverage cost percentage, equals our cost of goods sold. So when we break that down, our sale price is $50. Our beverage cost percentage is 25%. 50 divided by 1 over 0.25. We do our division parenthesis equation first, which is going to give us the number 4. So 50 divided by 4 is $12.50. It is going to cost us $12.50 for every single pairing that we pour, that we charge $50 of wine for, or $50 for, because we need to hit a 25% beverage cost percentage. So in order to make sure we hit a 25% beverage cost percentage with a sale price of $50, we can only spend $12.50. That doesn't seem like a lot, but we still have to break this down for the full amount of ounces. So we are going to have a bit more leeway. So don't worry, let's break into our third step. Now we need to figure out what our cost threshold is per ounce. The reason for this is 5 different courses. We want 5 different wines. So if we find out how much we need to spend per ounce, we can then figure out how much we can spend per bottle for each course. So our total cost of goods sold, we just figured that number out. It's $12.50. Our total cost of goods sold, $12.50, divided by our total ounces poured is going to equal our cost per ounce. So our total ounces poured, we already figured out in the first step, is 15 ounces. 5 courses times 3 ounces per course is a total of 15 ounces. That means we can spend 83 cents per ounce. Now we need to figure out what our available cost per bottle of wine is. So we know we have 83 cents per ounce that we can spend. We know that is a 750 milliliter bottle of wine, which is equivalent to 25.4 ounces. So we're going to multiply 25.4 ounces, which is a standard bottle of wine, by our cost per ounce, again, is 83 cents per ounce. That means we can spend $21.08 for each bottle for the course. Now that makes us feel a little bit better. We've got just over $100 that we get to spend when we look at the full course per bottle. Now, if you want to double check your work, it is recommended anytime you're doing math and trying to make money for your employer that you double check your work. So an easy way to double check your work is by making sure your beverage cost percentage matches what they told you to do. The way we do that is our costs of goods sold multiplied by the number of bottles we are going to need. We'll divide that number by the sale price times the pairings per bottle. That number divided by our first number is going to get us our beverage cost percentage. So let's break this in. We know we get $21.08 is our cost of good for the entire pairing. We have 5 courses, so 5 bottles times 21.08. That's going to get us 105.41 is the total amount that we can spend for our wine pairing. Now we have our sale price is $50. 25.4 is the amount of ounces in 1 bottle of wine. And we know that we are only pouring 3 ounces of that 25.4. So we need to figure out how many pairings we get per bottle. So we do the parentheses first. 25.4 divided by 3 gets us, we have 8 pairings per bottle. Now we're going to finish out the math here. 50 times 8.47 equals 423.5. Finishing our math, that is a 24.9 beverage cost percentage, which is right where we need to be at a 25% beverage cost percentage. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now, don't worry. Just practice this math and it will start becoming easier and less overwhelming. Before we move on, I want to ask if there are any questions that you guys have about cost of goods sold and about beverage cost percentage. I'm not seeing anything come on the screen. So I have created some useful tables for you to make all of this math a bit easier. I will also upload these tables onto the Sommelier Workshops tab underneath the classes menu when I upload this live recording. It will be right underneath. If you go on to the Sommelier Workshop tab now, you will see under the study methods of certification, there's a few different documents that you have access to as well. It will look just like that. So our pour calculation table, this is something that you should end up having imprinted into your brain at some point. But till then, I've created a nice little pour calculation table for you. So our bottles of wine are always listed in metric. This is a quick imperial change for you. So a 375 milliliter bottle, which is a half bottle, contains 12.7 ounces. 750 milliliter bottle, which is a standard bottle, contains 25.4 ounces. A 1 liter bottle, which is not so common for wine, but it is very common for liquor, is 33.8 ounces. A 1.5 liter bottle, also known as a magnum, is 50.7 ounces, and a 3 liter bottle is 101.4 ounces. This is something that if you have a converter on your phone, it will easily do this for you. But when you're in the exam doing your advanced exam or the master's exam, these numbers are great to have already in your brain. So for a 375, actually let's just focus on 750 milliliters because that's what we just did our equation for. If you are doing a 1 ounce pour, you get 25 pours per bottle. 2 ounce pour, 12 pours per bottle. 4 ounce pour, 6 pours per bottle. 6 ounce pour, 4 pours per bottle. And you'll notice I'm not talking about the 0.2 because typically that is going to go to waste. It's going to go to tasting a guest on a wine or over pouring or spillage or things along those lines. So rounding down is kind of crucial when we are calculating pours because we always want to equate for waste and for spillage because it's inevitable. We're humans, we overpour, we spill, we want to give someone a taste of something before they actually purchase a full bottle or a full pairing, things along those lines. So feel free to take a picture of this if you haven't already done so. I've got a little camera icon on the screens that I think are beneficial to take a picture of so you have them. Again, I will also put these up onto the Sommelier Workshops tab, which is accessible to all industry members, industry plan members. All right, so with being a sommelier, more often than not, you are not just running the program for wine, you are running the entire beverage program, which includes liquor and beer. So with liquor and beer, same thing. We have a pour calculation table that I created for you to make life nice and easy. So for our liquor bottle breakdown, a 4 ounce bottle size, which is a typical bitters bottle size, there are 100 dashes per ounce. So we have 400 dashes in a 4 ounce bottle of bitters. 750 milliliter, this doesn't change, 25.4 ounces. 1 liter doesn't change, 33.8 ounces. The common cocktail beverage cost percentage that is ran throughout the United States is usually between 17 and 20%. Now, we talked about a lot of restaurants, the wine program is somewhere around a 3-time markup or a 33%. Cocktail programs tend to make a lot more money, or I should say they make a quicker profit than wine sales do, and they have a lower beverage cost percentage. So typically, between 17 and 20% is a common beverage cost percentage for a cocktail program. For beer breakdowns, I have a keg breakdown for you. So each keg has its own name. There are 5 different keg sizes for you here. A full-size keg is also known as a half barrel, which contains 15.5 gallons, which equates to 124 pints or 165 bottles. A European keg is 50 liters, which equates to 13.2 gallons or 105 pints or 140 bottles. European Pony is a 30-liter keg, which is 8.1 gallons, 64 pints or 85 bottles. A pony keg is also known as a quarter barrel. This is 7.75 gallons or 62 pints or 82 bottles. And then a sextel, also known as a torpedo, also known as a 6th barrel, is 5.16 gallons, 41 pints, or 54 bottles. Again, this is something that it's easy to just write this down for yourself, but when it comes to the exam, this is something that's good to really have in your brain prior to the exams. So a common beverage cost percentage for draft beer is around 21 to 22%, and for bottled beer is typically around 23 to 25%. We are now going to price out cocktails as well as beer. But before I get into us pricing out these, I kind of want to talk about the pricing options that are common throughout restaurants. So I'm going to talk about the bottom two real quick. There is a consistent $10 over retail pricing option, as well as a consistent $30 over wholesale pricing option. These would typically be found in maybe restaurants that have a retail program as well, or smaller, kind of mom and pop type restaurants. The bottom two pricing options aren't very common, so I'm really not going to spend a ton of time on them. But when you do go to a wine business course or accounting course for wine, they will talk about these two programs. So I just want you to be aware of them. So a consistent $10 over retail, you're going to pick, whatever your average retail or suggested retail by the winery is. And then you're just going to add $10 to that price. As you can see, your beverage cost percentages are going to be a bit wonky. And same thing, if you have a consistent $30 over wholesale, which means it doesn't matter what your cost is, you're only going to add $30 to your cost. Again, your beverage cost percentage gets a little wonky. So this isn't super common by any means. The first two are the most common, so we're going to really focus on these two. A steady beverage cost percentage means that your investor or your owner says that you have to run, in this specific example, a 33% every single month. So that means if you have a $10 bottle you paid $10 for, you are going to sell it for $30 because you need to have a 33% beverage cost percentage. That means you are going to make $20 on that bottle. If you have a $25 bottle of wine, to make sure your beverage cost percent is 33% or a 3-time markup, we are going to sell that bottle for $75, which means every time you sell that bottle, you are going to make $50. If your bottle costs you $100, to get our 33% markup, we're going to price that bottle for $300. And when we sell that bottle, we are going to make $200. This steady beverage cost percentage is great for a company that stability is important for them. They can show every single month that they are hitting the same numbers. This is really common for companies that are looking to franchise or to grow or to get more investment and things along those lines. However, there are some downsides to running a program where everything is marked up exactly the same. The first downside to it is wines that cost quite a bit more money. For the customers who like to spend high amounts of money on wine are going to feel like they're not getting a value for spending that $1,000 or $5,000. They're going to see that your wine list is priced on the higher end side. Also, lower priced wines tend to be heavy movers, so you could be leaving some potential profits on the table if you are keeping everything priced at the same exact percentage, this course being a 3-time markup. So this isn't bad or good by any means. There are pros and cons, and it's really up to what your investor, what your owner, what your goal is for your program on if this is beneficial or maybe not so beneficial for your specific program. The option that I see more often than not, and that most sommeliers that I have spoken to prefer, and I prefer myself, is a sliding scale. So this means that if you have lower end bottles, you are going to, this is just an example here, you can put this any percentage way that you want. But if you have a $10 bottle, you are going to sell it at $40 to run a 25% beverage cost percentage and to make $30 every time you sell that bottle. Our $40 bottles of wine in most higher end restaurants are on the quite low side, and it tends to be that they sell relatively quickly. So the more the volume you're moving on these wines, the more money you have coming in, which helps to be a bit of a pad for our next scenario. So our wine 2, which is a $25 bottle of wine, we are going to sell at a 33% beverage cost percentage, which means a $75 price point, which means we're going to make $50 every time that bottle is sold. Now, this price point might be an average or a touch high price point for your wine list or for your clientele. So maybe it's not a huge mover, but we know we're still making at least 33% on that bottle. Whereas in our third example, this would be our example for our high-end wines. You could add a 0 to that and make it 1,000 if you want to. I'm just using a very basic example. So a $100 cost, we're going to sell at $200, which isn't very much, but maybe we just don't move $100 bottle cost wines in our restaurant. And if instead of selling them for $30 at 33%, we sell them at $200 for 50% to try to get them to move more, yes, we don't make as much on them, but our guests are going to feel like there is value in spending money on that wine. So it is more likely for us to sell that high-end bottle if we're not making a ton on it, because our guests are going to see the value in spending their money on that bottle. And the purpose of doing a sliding scale is our wine 1 is going to make us a ton of money. And that money is going to consistently come in because it is at our sweet spot price point. And that sweet spot price point is going to be different for every single restaurant, for every single business, for every single city. It completely changes depending where you are, but we're going to call wine 1 our sweet spot. This is where we don't even have to think about the wines. They're going to sell without us even coming to the table. Wine 2 is where maybe half of our clientele, or just less than half of our clientele, is comfortable spending their money. Maybe we have to sell them a little bit on the wine. Maybe they need a little bit more information and to feel that they have trust in us to buy this wine. Where wine 3 is our wines that are not going to sell quickly. So it's better to make $100 rather than to sit on the bottle for a very long time because it's not moving. So this is our high-end wines that only a very special clientele is going to spend their money on. Again, this could easily be $1,000 rather than $100. I'm just using basic figures for ease here. And this is where our value comes in for our guests. So we're not going to sell this wine very often. That's why this wine is going to help make up the difference for when we do happen to sell this wine and our numbers go off a little bit. So these are our 2 most common pricing options that are seen throughout. There are even more pricing options than these. Some people do a standard 33% markup and then add $5 to every single bottle. Some people do a standard 25% and subtract $10. Like, there's all these different things that each different company does a little bit differently. But this is kind of a just easy go-to basic to know. So our steady beverage cost percentage is great to show financial stability, but maybe leaves money on the table. The sliding scale, you could have your numbers be off a little bit every single month, but it is going to be the most value and the most profit for your company. Again, no better or worse. It is just whatever is most beneficial for your program, for your investors and your owners' visions, and for the profitability of what they are wanting. So let's get into some inventory management. We are going to reference this in our next screen, but the next screen will not show this. So please just write this down real quick or take a little snapshot with your phone so you can go back to it. So we're going to work with an inventory sheet on our next screen. If we are pouring a wine by the glass, we are pouring a 6-ounce pour. Our inventory is on a sliding scale, which means our by the glass wines are priced at 25% beverage cost percentage. That includes the bottle price for that by the glass wine. Our wines that cost under $50 are going to be priced at 28% beverage cost percentage, and our wines that cost over $50 are going to be priced at 33% beverage cost percentage. So again, jot that down real quick or take a little screenshot of the screen, and we are going to look at the most simple inventory sheet you have ever seen. They will not look this simple when you are actually running a program. So here is your inventory sheet. Again, your by the glass pour is a 6-ounce pour. We're talking only standard 750 milliliter bottles here. And we know from our pour calculation table that we get 4 6-ounce pours to a standard 750 milliliter bottle. All of your sale prices, I want rounded to the nearest increment of 5, rounded up to the nearest increment of 5. So on here, our inventory page, there are quite a few that are filled out for you so you can see how this works. We are going back to using our cost of goods sold formula and our beverage cost percentage formula. So for instance here, Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc is going to cost us $9.99. This is a by the glass wine. So we know we need our beverage cost percentage to be 25%. So that's roughly $10. We're going to sell that bottle for $40 because we're doing our 25% markup rounded to the nearest increment of 5. So we always want our wine list to end in a 0 or a 5. Same thing, Red Sauvignon Blanc. This is not a by the glass. If there's dashes here, it means that it is not offered by the glass. If there is a blank, like right here, I want you to tell me what the by the glass price is. All of these blanks, I would like for you to fill in. So this one, you're going to work the equation backwards to tell me what the cost of Romoisine Puligny Montrachet is. We're selling it for $230. We know it's a 33% beverage cost percentage. Somehow we accidentally hit delete on this field and we didn't realize. We need to do the math backwards to figure out what that wine actually costs us. And again, this is direct cost, not a sale price, so we're not rounding this at all. This is just the direct number. For Joseph Favely Bourgogne Pinot Noir, we just brought that wine in. So we need to figure out how much we want to sell it by the glass and what our beverage cost percentage is. We already know if we're selling something by the glass because of, because of our previous example, we have to do by the glass at 25%. So our 25% is going to get filled in here, and you just do the math to figure out what our by the glass price is going to be. Same thing, Chateau de Pez. It costs us $43. According to this, if it's under $50, our BCP is 28%. Do your math to figure out what you want to sell that for. And then our Chapelet is $68.25. That's over $50. So we know we need to sell at a 33% beverage cost percentage. Do your math and figure out what your sale price is. Go ahead and fill all of this out. You can just write the numbers down for yourself, type them in for me if you'd like. I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to figure out these equations or these numbers. Again, we're just doing the formula backwards. So if we're selling this for $230, we know 33% is the same as 0.33. We're going to multiply 230 by 0.33 to get us the cost of this wine, which is $75.90. Next one, Joseph Favely Bourgogne Pinot Noir. So this is blank on by the glass. We are going to run this by the glass. Since it's a by the glass, we know we are running a 25% beverage cost percentage. This is the same thing as a 4-time markup. We're going to do the same thing. $80 multiplied by 0.25 is going to get us our by the glass price, which is $20 by the glass. Very good, Raphael. Thank you. Domaine de la Bougerie, we don't have to fill in. Chateau de Seal is all filled in for us. Next, Chateau de Pez. So $43 cost. We know if it's less than $50, we have a 28% beverage cost percentage. We are going to do the opposite. So here, for our sale price, we multiplied by the beverage cost percentage. To get our sale price, we are going to divide our beverage cost percentage. So 43, bring this into a decimal point, which is 0.28. 43 multiplied by 0.28. No, I'm sorry, divided by 43 divided by 0.28 is going to give us $153.57. But we talked about in the beginning, all of our sale prices should be rounded up to the nearest increment of 5. 153 gets rounded up to 155 because we want our wine list ending in 0s and 5s for the entire list. We want to keep a continuity to the way our list looks. Now, last one, same thing. If it's a sale price and we're trying to figure out the cost, we multiply. If it's a cost, trying to figure out a sale price, we divide. So $68.25 is our cost. 33% is our beverage cost percentage. We need to transfer that into a decimal, which is 0.33. $68.25 divided by 0.33 gives us $206.82. Again, we are rounding up to the nearest increment of 5, so 206 gets rounded up to 210. Any questions on this page and how we just did those programs, those equations? Oh, good job, Raphael. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come up. So we're going to work on how we price out a cocktail now. Because again, sommeliers who are running the program most likely are not just running the wine program, they're likely running the entire beverage program. So you need to know how to price out cocktails as well as price out beer. So we're going to do cocktails first, then we will do a beer equation. Our cocktail example is a very easy example. It's an equal equation cocktail, or an equal component cocktail, which is known as a Negroni. So our example is, what would you price a Negroni cocktail on your menu for using 1 ounce of each of the following ingredients and meeting the requirement of a 20% beverage cost percentage? We need 1 ounce of Tanqueray. The 1 liter bottle of Tanqueray costs us $30. We need 1 ounce of Campari. A 1 liter bottle of Campari costs us $32. And we need 1 ounce of vermouth. The 750 milliliter bottle of vermouth costs us $10. So let's break into this step by step. First, we need to know this only is asking us for 1 ounce of each ingredient. So let's figure out how much 1 ounce of each ingredient is going to cost. 1 ounce of Tanqueray is, 1 bottle of Tanqueray is $30. We see that it is a 1 liter bottle, and from our pour calculation table, we know that a 1 liter bottle equals 33.8 ounces. So 33.8 divided by $30 is going to give us our cost per ounce. Same thing for Campari, same thing for vermouth. Vermouth is a 750 milliliter bottle, so that's 25.4 ounces. 10 divided by 25.4. I'm going to give you just a quick second to figure out how much an ounce of each of these costs. All right. Tanqueray, we need 1 ounce of Tanqueray. There is $30 cost for our bottle of Tanqueray. It's a 1 liter, which we know is 33.8 ounces. So we do our quick math here. Tanqueray costs us 89 cents per ounce. Campari is a $32 bottle. It's another 1 liter, so we have 33.8 ounces in that 1 liter. We only need 1 ounce, so we do our quick math, and it's 95 cents per ounce. Vermouth, it's a $10 bottle. This is a 750 milliliter bottle, which on our pour calculation table told us there are 25.4 ounces in a standard bottle. Quick math, vermouth costs us 39 cents per ounce. We know we need 1 ounce of each of these. So we're going to add up these 3 numbers to get our cost of goods sold for the cocktail. We need to determine how much this cocktail costs us to make. So we need 1 ounce of each, add the 3 together, and that gives us how much it costs us to make this cocktail. 89 cents plus 95 cents plus 39 cents is $2.23. That's how much it costs us to make the cocktail. Now we know that we need to run a 20% beverage cost percentage. So we need to put this into our equation to figure out what the sale price of this cocktail is going to be. So we know our cost of goods sold is $2.23 because we only need 1 ounce of each ingredient. We plug $2.23 into our equation. We need to divide that by our beverage cost percentage, which is 20%, also 0.20 because we need to move this into a decimal to make our life easier for math. $2.23 divided by 0.20 is going to give us our menu price. So our quick math here, $2.23 times 5, because a 20% markup, there's 5 20s to make 100, is a quick 5-time markup. That costs us, our sale price is $11.15. Now, Raphael, good job on here. I see you put $12. Never on a cocktail list, or I shouldn't say never, I'm sure there are some people who do this. You don't typically see a change amount on a cocktail price list. They are typically going to be a straight number, $10, $12, $15, $18, $20, whatever the case is. Now, $11.15, we don't want to lower that price because then our beverage cost percentage is going to be off. So if we charge $12 for this cocktail, it gives us leniency for spillage, for waste, for a bartender overpouring, not using a jig or things along those lines. So if we round down, we are going to undercut our profit. If we round up, we are going to give our staff leeway for human error, for spillage, for waste, for overpouring, things along those lines. This is a very easy cocktail. Not all cocktails are equal portions. Most cocktails are not equal portions. So you could get a much more challenging example than this, but you would just have to do a touch more math is all. Any questions on pricing out cocktails? Raphael, would it be, oh, yes, I answered that. Yep, great. Perfect. So let's talk about pricing draft beer. Our beer example, if you buy a half barrel of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale for $147, how much should you charge per pint if you need to run a 20% beverage cost percentage? Now, hopefully you took a picture of that pour calculation table where it talked about all of those beer kegs. Let's break this down. The first thing that we need to do is we need to determine how much it costs us for a pint of this beer. So step one, we determine the cost per pint. It's a half barrel, which we know from that pour calculation table, there are 124 pints to a half barrel. $147 is the cost of our keg, divided by 124 pints means that it's going to cost us $1.19 per pint. Now we need to figure out how much we want to sell that beer for. We know it costs us $1.19 per pint. And our equation here, our example here, tells us that we have to run a 20% beverage cost percentage. So we need to plug everything into our formula. $1.19 is our cost per pint. 1 divided by 20% gives us our decimal point, 0.20, which is simple math, a 5-time markup. $1.19 times 5 is $5.95 per pint. Again, most of the time, Oh, I have cocktail example on the top of there. Sorry about that. It's beer example, not cocktail example, as you see. I'll fix that before I put it up onto um, the site. So $5.95 per pint. Again, we are not going to put, more often than not, a change factor on our pint price. So $6 per pint would commonly be put on our menu. If we want to do a quick double check on this, our cost of goods sold, we know is $1.19. Our sale price, just doing a standard markup, not rounding at all, is $5.95. Do our quick math, that gets us 20%. However, with draft beer, a lot of waste occurs. And because this waste commonly occurs, we need to make up for that waste when we are pricing our beer. So with draft beer, there are lots of issues that could happen, and there's lots of things that create more waste with draft beer. One of them is cleaning. When you clean the line, when you're putting a new beer in, or you're just cleaning the line in general to make sure it's clean, you are going to lose beer when you clean the line. If the keg warms up a little bit and it foams a ton, your bartender is going to be sitting there and pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring, letting so much foam go over, which equates to beer going over as well. If your bartender is not pouring properly, if there are CO2 issues, if there's a temperature fluctuation, like I was mentioning before, so many different things can happen, which will easily have waste with draft beer. So it is safe to account for 20% of every keg that you bring in is going to go to waste. Will that much go to waste? Who knows? But it's really safe to say that 20% can go to waste, and just to equate that into when you price your beer. So let's redo the entire equation, accounting for waste. So again, we have a half barrel of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. It costs $147. How much should we charge per pint if we run at a 20% beverage cost percentage? Now, including our waste calculation. So we need to add 20% to the cost of the keg before we run the equation like we most previously did. So our keg cost plus the waste equals our new keg cost. We know that the keg costs us $147, but we need to figure out what 20% of that is. So 147 multiplied by 20% is $29.40 worth of waste. Let's add that to the initial cost of the keg, which is $147, which now is equating for waste. It's like we are paying $176.40 for the keg. Now we are equating that waste in right from the beginning, and now going to set the price to equate for that waste. So that's not coming out of our pocket, it's coming through the profit. So now we need to determine the cost per pint. We know that our new price for the keg, the in quotation cost of the keg, including our waste, is $176.40. Because the barrel size didn't change, it's a half barrel. We know that there are 124 pints in a half barrel. That gives us our new cost of $1.42 per pint. So instead of costing us $1.19 per pint, when we equate in the waste, it's now going to cost us $1.42 per pint. Now we need to figure out what the sale price will be. Putting in our figures into our simple math equation, $1.42 per pint multiplied by our 20% beverage cost percentage, which can be just a straight 5-time markup for easy math, means that it's going to be now $7.10 per pint. Now here it's completely up to you as the person who is running the program. This is only 10 cents over and we're creating for waste already. Do you want to charge $7 or would you prefer to charge $8? It's completely up to you and how you feel the customers will pay, if they'll think $8 is too much or if they think $7 is fair. You're equating for waste already, so rounding down here might not be the most terrible thing. It is completely up to you. Questions about pricing beer? I'm not seeing anything. So let's talk about PMix. So PMix is an abbreviation for a product mix. A product mix is a tool that shows what you sold and the frequency in which you sold it. This is going to be created by your point of sale system, whichever point of sale system you are using. Product mixes are extremely helpful to figure out what's actually moving and what is not moving in your restaurant. The high volume wines, the wines that are moving a ton, are your money makers. So this is where we can really start to make a difference for our program, is with our money makers. If we know that that glass of Chianti is just selling like hotcakes, maybe it's time to look for a bottle that is not quite as expensive, but the quality is just the same, so we can keep the price the same and keep making more money. Our high volume wines are our padding for anything that could happen to go wrong in a month, or if we sell a really high-end bottle of wine and it throws off our numbers, these high volume wines really help make everything easier for us. You also will be able to see what wines are not moving. And those slow movers, we don't want to have a stuck inventory. There are some inventories that allow for cellaring. However, it's really not a profitable system to have a cellaring component in your program. This is really more for programs that are looking for grand award lists that have a whole ton of room and space for storing wine and things along those lines. So here you'll be able to see where your slow movers are, and you can run a special for your guests, or maybe you can run a competition for your staff to get that product out so you can buy things that will move with that money rather than just having that money sit. Next is other helpful tools. A P&L sheet, also known as a profit and loss sheet. This is a great tool that can be used in any time increment you desire. You can place it for a month, for a year, for 5 years, whatever you want. And it will show you your overall profitability and the trends of your program. This is commonly used by most sommeliers who are running programs. The next two are typically used more by owners or sommeliers who happen to be the owners of their programs, their restaurants. A balance sheet, which is just a statement of financial position, which is great for showing that you're doing well with your business. And then a general ledger, which is a record of every transaction that is made. Again, this is probably done by your point of sale system to make your life easier than writing everything down. Any questions about basic math, costs of goods, beverage cost percentage, all of these abbreviations, anything like that before we break into wine lists? All right, I'm not seeing anything come in. So I'm gonna show you, all I did is Google wine lists and pulled some things that maybe are rough on the eyes or easy on the eyes or can kind of just give us some basic things. And then I'll talk about wine lists in a very broad, vague way. I'll probably put together at some point a wine list development class. I don't know when it will be. It's just something that I decided to put together when I figured wine lists would be a good part of this course. This is the first time I'm teaching about wine lists. And I never did it before because I think this could have its own area just in general, its own course just in general. So this will be kind of brief and very broad, but I want to just touch on wine lists in general. That was one of the biggest requests I got from surveys I did from previous classes. So on the screen, you can see two different wine lists. When you are putting together your wine lists, it's really important to make sure your list is easy on the eyes for your guest. If you look at both of these, they are a bit chaotic. The one on the left does a great job of putting descriptions in, so maybe the sommelier doesn't need to be at the table for the guests to see what this wine is going to taste like. They show their glass bottle and I can't even read that, whatever that last one is, price. And then they have this broaden out into categories, which breaks down and makes it a little easier for the eyes to go directly to what they're specifically looking for. However, because they have these descriptions here, it's not quite as easy just to look and see what there actually is. It takes a little bit more focus for the eyes, which might be great. It might not be great. This is just to kind of give some basic information about each of these and talking about pros and cons. So this next wine list, there's a lot of prices over here, some of which seem to have a place, some of which don't seem to have a place. There's a whole lot going here. So this can be quite confusing for a guest. However, they do have this broken down pretty easy. They have France, New World for whites. For reds, Burgundy, Bordeaux, Rhone, Loire, New World. Kind of makes it easy for someone who they know that they like French whites. They can go right here and look. They have this listed by producer first. There's no right or wrong on how you're labeling or starting your wine list. Some people prefer grape first, some people prefer place first, some people prefer producer first. It is completely up to however you prefer it to be and what you think works best for your clientele. So here they have the vintages at the very end. They have some highlighting here, maybe trying to push those wines out a little bit, but maybe not the most easy to understand thing with all of their pricing over here. So a couple other ones for you. This one, relatively easy on the eyes, both of these. The font's at a level that is readable for probably most people without having to get some readers out or a magnifying glass or something like that. They have this broken down, really easy categories: Pinot Noir, Merlot, Cab. It's broken down by grape. And they have earthy reds here. Maybe they want to just put a little other section, earthy reds. Some things here is you'll notice some have vintages, some have 2 vintages, some have 0 vintages. So depending on the level of knowledge of your customer, that might be a bit confusing or frustrating for them if they can see some vintages on some but don't see vintages on other, and maybe vintages are important to them. Here we have, again, the producer first, then we have the region, and then the grape is on the header. On the next one, so broken down: sparkling white, rosé, red, nice and easy on the eyes. One thing here is they don't have producers shown for a lot of their wines. They just have Chardonnay, Riesling, Elbling, which is a grape. Maybe not the most user-friendly. Here we've got some producers listed. There's not a consistency throughout the wine list. So having consistency and balance is really important when putting our wine lists together. Here are some that are also relatively easy on the eyes. We have a nice little description. We have labeled by grape variety first, then producer, then vintage, then location. Here we have our price points all listed kind of evenly, which is great. One of my personal pet peeves is when there's not consistency to the last number of the wine list. We got 7, 2, 5, 3, 0, 9, 6. That drives me a little bit bonkers. It's not so easy on the eyes. But overall, this is really easy to look at, to read. It gives an opportunity for the wine list to sell itself for the people who maybe are afraid for a sommelier to come by. They can read a little description, they can see the price, they can, make their decision based on what the list itself shows, which is helpful for a lot of people. Then we have over here a breakdown, so by the glass versus white, priced out by, or listed out by place, producer first, then more specifically the place, the region, and the price. We've got some by the glass. You get a couple different ounce pours by the glass. Producer first, no vintages, which might be nice or might not be nice for by the glass. Maybe you don't want your Chardonnay to be, back vintage. You'd like to know what vintage it is. And then you have your rouge, your red, broken down nice and easy as well. So again, I'm not going to say any of these lists are bad or good. We're just kind of talking about the basics of it. So when building your wine list, whether they're paper or they're electronic, is really up to the program. I have worked with both. When I was first in the business, I really enjoyed electronic lists. I thought it was very easy and very user-friendly. And then once I got more into understanding wines and my knowledge grew, I didn't like electronic lists quite as much. I prefer paper lists. But it's really completely up to the owner, the clientele, things like that, which is better for your company. If you're a company that strives on having, more green options and not so much touching of things, then maybe, or printing of things, maybe electronic is the way to go. But again, there's pros and cons to both, paper versus electronic. But when you're building your list, no matter if it's paper or it's electronic, post-COVID definitely changes that as well. A lot of places I've gone, good point, Raphael. A lot of places I've gone have the QR code, and you just scan it, and maybe you get a PDF of what the printout would be, which is, you get printout and electronic at the same time, kind of, minus actually not having your hand on the paper. But when you are designing your wine list, there are lots of things that you want to think about. The first is balance. You want your list to be balanced. If you've got 20 sparkling wines, 3 white wines, and 4 red wines, there's maybe not so much balance there. We want to make sure that there is an easy amount of options for anybody who could come in. If you are running a wine list in a restaurant that serves food, it is helpful to have or at least a portion of your wine list be compatible to your cuisine for the customers who enjoy having their food and their wine pair. Again, not all people like or care for their food and the wine to pair. And then there's sticklers. I'm one of those sticklers. If the wine doesn't taste good with my food, I'm going to eat the food first, and then I'm going to drink the wine afterwards. So really dependent on your clientele, but you do yourself a service is if you have a majority, or at least a decent portion of your list being compatible to the cuisine that you are selling. Consumer friendly. I kind of spoke about this a little bit before when I walked into a restaurant and I literally did not know one single wine on the menu. I felt very out of place and a little bit scared of the wine list. And I ordered a cocktail. I didn't order wine because I didn't know what any of the stuff was. And I couldn't find a sommelier on the floor. And the servers really didn't know much about it either. And I was like, okay, well, having a consumer-friendly list is really helpful. Do a lot of sommeliers prefer not to sell the Camises, the Silver Oaks, the Duck Horns, the whatever of the world? Sure. Maybe that's not their favorite wines. Maybe they have some stigmatism against them, whatever it is. But you really do yourself a disservice when you don't have those wines on your list, because they sell without you being there. They are instant money makers. And me personally, what I did is I would mark those wines up a little bit more. And then the wines that I knew were going to be a little bit more of a hand sell, I would mark them down a little bit, because I would basically show value to someone who was taking a chance and trying something new. And for the people who wanted those, higher image wines that are known for volume and maybe not sommelier centric wines, people are going to buy them. Kind of depending, a lot of people buy them no matter what the price point is. Of course, you're not going outrageous by any means, but marking them up a little bit, a lot of people will still buy them. So you're making a little extra money to help pad for the customers who are a little bit more adventurous and the ones that you can hand sell some wines to. Font size and type are very important. You don't want the size to be too small to where someone needs to bring out some readers or a magnifying glass. And you want the font type to be legible. I can't even tell you how many times I go into a wine list or into a restaurant and their font is like some swirly cursive-y weird font or some strange font. And I'm like, yeah, it looks cool, but it's not the easiest to read. And the whole point of having a wine list is to sell wine when you can't be there. And having an easy font type and an easy size is really beneficial to you in selling wine when you can't be at the table. Also, layout. There's tons of different layouts that you can have for your wine list. You can lay it out by style. You have sparkling and white and red. You can set it out by grape, which we saw. You have, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio, Cabernet Merlot, Zinfandel, whatever the case is. You can have it by region. This is really common for massive lists. They tend to have them broken out by place. And then some lists I've seen that are on the smaller side, put it by body. So let's say, fun sparkling wines, light, easy drinking, full and round, things along those lines. Next, price variation. So when you are building your wine list, You want your prices to have variation on the menu. So you don't want to have 10 Pinot Noirs on your list that are all between $50 and $75. It is beneficial for you to have those 10 be spread out. So you have one at maybe 30, one at 50, one at 70, one at 120, one at 150. That gives you a lot of variation for your guest, whoever wants to spend, whatever kind of money. It also gives you ability to upsell, and it also gives you the ability to track to see where your sweet spot is going to be for your restaurant. So you can start working on finding deals for wines in that sweet spot so you can start making more money for your program. Also, price variation can go into your sliding scale or your steady beverage cost percentage markup. You want that price variation to be easy for the guest, where they're not feeling like they're getting, ripped off by a wine being priced too high. It's always really beneficial to, when you're buying wine from a supplier or from a distributor, when you're buying wine, to look at what the wine retails for and see if they're selling the wine where it makes sense for you to price it. If they're selling the price of the wine at an outrageous point to where you have it at a 3, 4, 5 time markup than retail, then you're really doing yourself a disservice when you're purchasing that wine. And lastly is typos. So many people are so afraid for other people to look at their list, to critique their list, to, mark up their list. One of the best things you can do is, once you have your wine list ready, let a few people look at it. That is something that your eyes have just been focused on for over and over and over and over for hours. And if you give that list out to a couple people who you trust, who are great at English or great at finding errors or things along those lines, it does everybody a service, especially your guests, especially your wine-centric guests. I promise you, they're going to be the first people to find the typo. I'm especially one of those. And I cannot stand when there's typos on wine lists. So make sure you are not too protective over your product, and let other people help you and make sure you don't have typos on your list. So that's just the basic about wine lists. Again, I think I'll end up creating a class specifically devoted to wine lists. I just haven't done so yet. It'll take a little bit. All right, auctions. Oh, good question. Any recommended software for that QR code download of any wine list? The QR code is its own thing, so you don't need a software to download it. You would just link the QR code to a PDF that you create, and then your guest just uses the camera on their phone, and it will link directly to that QR code. Great question. So auctions, there are many, many states that do not allow you to purchase wine from an auction for your restaurant. But what could happen is you could have a regular who comes in and spends lots of money, who now wants to entrust some money to you to buy wine from them for them from an auction, so that they can start cellaring more wines or drinking more wines. Or this is the first time I specifically got involved in dealing with auctions, was sitting for my first advanced exam. In the business of wine portion, there was an auction part of the exam. And I was like, oh, shoot, I don't know any of this. And so that's why I'm putting this in here. This is something that maybe you don't deal with, or maybe will never deal with, but it could come up on the exams, and I would like to help prepare people for the exam. So when you are purchasing old wine, there are so many precautions that you need to take. The first is you need to inquire into the owner history. Has that person owned the wine for the entire time? Have they bought it from 5 other sources? Has it changed 5 different times into different places? Was it shipped properly? Are they storing the wine properly? Do they have it on its side? Do they have it humidity controlled? Do they have it temperature controlled, or is it just chilling in their grandma's basement? If they are shipping it, when are they shipping it? Here in Las Vegas, it is detrimental to ship wine in the summer. It's way too hot. So if you're shipping it during the summer, did they have a refrigerated truck? And then you want to be able to inspect those bottles. Maybe, especially now because of COVID, inspecting bottles in person is not the easiest thing to do, but you could easily hop on a Zoom call like we're doing, or FaceTime each other or whatever, and they can show you what that bottle looks like. You want to make sure there's no damage to the bottle, there's no leakage, there's no oulage, which is a gap between the shoulder and the top level of the wine itself. So with that oulage, there are codes when you're buying from auction that will be used to tell you where the oulage is. BN is where most wines oulage should be. If the wine is 20, 30, 40 years old, maybe top of the shoulder or very high shoulder can end up happening. But then we've got maybe some issues with the cork or something like that that we need to inspect a little bit further. Mid shoulder, low shoulder, if our wine is getting to this level in the bottle, there could very likely be something happening wrong up in this portion of the bottle that needs to be examined. So go ahead and take a picture of this. We're going to use it for our next example that we're doing. Here are different codes that can be used when speaking about the label, specifically if it's stained, if it's torn, if it's faded, if it fell off, things along those lines. These codes are in reference to the capsule. So if there's some corrosion on the capsule, if the capsule fell off, if it's oxidized, things along those lines. And then these codes reply or are directly in reference to the cork. So is the cork protruding a little bit out of the bottle? Did it sink in to the bottle? Is there seepage around the cork? Things along those lines. So our next example, a client asks you to source wine for their cellar that they can consume upon purchase. They prefer French red wine. You have a $5,000 budget. You need to account for 8% buyer's fee. That means 8% of that $5,000 goes into your pocket for doing this for them. Which of the following options would you choose for your client and why? I'm going to give you a few minutes just to look at this and figure out what is best for your client. Just to repeat the important parts. They want to consume the wine upon purchase. This is not to cellar. They prefer French wine. You have a $5,000 budget. That includes your 8% buyer's fee. So here are your 4 options. Go ahead and look through those, take a minute, and when you feel like you are ready to pick an option, you can just shoot me the message privately, or you can put it for everyone to see, whatever you prefer. And we will talk about each of these and why there's only one particular one that would be the best option. All right, let's go ahead and talk about these. Sorry, that was a little quick. I just realized the time, and we are going to go just a touch over. But let's talk about each of these. So, option 4, these are all French reds. They look great to drink right away. However, when you total everything up, you are $150 over budget. So unfortunately, option 4 is thrown out. Option 1, they specifically said that they like French red wine. We are in our budget, but we only have Cheval Blanc in there, which fits what they prefer. There's 1 white wine and 2 sparkling wines. So that option does not work for us. Next, option 3, these are all delicious red wines that are drinkable for sure right now. However, none of them are French. So even though we are under budget and those are deliciously drinkable red wines, they are not French, so it is not fitting their requests. Lastly, we have option 2. We have very drinkable, delicious wines. We save them a touch of money. Maybe they'll throw that extra bit to you for saving them a little bit money, who knows? And they get all French drinkable wines. So option 2 would be your pick there. Next, into problem solving. So after you finish inventory, you notice your beverage cost percentage is 10% higher than it should be, meaning your inventory shows you brought in a 40% beverage cost percentage when you are supposed to bring in a 30% beverage cost percentage. What do you do? This happens a lot. And typically, there was just an error that was made. Most typically, that error is inventory variance. So you need to look at your inventory, look at your previous month's inventory, and see if maybe you forgot to count an entire row, or you put 1 bottle when it was 11 bottles, or something along those lines. If you go through your entire inventory and your inventory looks great, then you might want to check all of your invoices. Maybe you had a few different vintage changes and the distributor didn't tell you that there was a price jump for that vintage change. Maybe your point of sale or the spreadsheet that you used has an error in its formulas and something wasn't calculated properly. Check your waste and comp logs if you have them. I always recommend that a waste and a comp log is kept so your staff can say, we dropped this bottle. Oh, we over poured this. Oh, a guest didn't like an entire bottle. It was corked. Things along those lines, so you can make sure that you are tracking all of that. Also, hopefully this isn't something that you ever have to worry about, but it can happen, that there was some theft issues. That would be hopefully the last thing that you have to look for, and hopefully something that doesn't come into play. There are some preventative options that you can also do to make sure that your variance and that your numbers stay on par, is purchasing wines at closeout. And this is when I was talking about finding a wine that's in your sweet spot that is at the same quality, but you get a deal on. And when you buy wines at closeout, meaning that the distributor is selling them for much cheaper than they typically would, yes, you have the option to give that discount also to your guest, but sometimes it does a disservice to the wine and to your profitability when you do that. So the more beneficial to your program and to your pocket, at least your owner's pocket, is by keeping those closeout wines selling at the same price, but now you're making all of that extra profit. By the glass bottle dating, so when you open up a bottle, you write the date that it is of that day, so you can track if that bottle is moving quickly, if it's selling well, if it's been open for over 3 days or 5 days. It should definitely be tested and tasted to see if it's still tasting properly. You can use by-the-glass preservation systems. If you tend to have by-the-glass bottles that aren't moving quickly, you can use things like an enigmatic machine, a Coravin, repours, all different kinds of, there's so many preservation systems, just pumping the gas out, spraying some argon gas in before you close it, things along those lines. And then this is controversial. It's probably the best word to use, this last one, by the glass bottle marrying. No, you don't ever want to marry a bottle that isn't the same thing to increase levels or volume of something, which a lot of people have done that in the past, and people get, sued or whatever the case can happen for that. But if you have, for instance, 2 bars in your restaurant, or you have a really, really busy night and you don't have time to take a bottle that is basically empty, and you don't want to pour 2 bottles in front of your guest into one glass, having that first bottle that has maybe 2 or 3 ounces left in it set aside, that you pour into a brand new bottle, as long as both bottles are, completely sound, it helps the aesthetics of pouring that wine. This helps also because instead of having one bottle with, 10 or 20 ounces of oxygen space, you can pour that little bit into a bottle that's a little bit fuller, and you have a less oxygen space or less oxygen contact touching your wine, churning your wine. Oxygen is a great thing for us, but for wine, it's not the best thing. All right, some final notes. Some optimal vendor relationship notes, and I'm not going to talk too much on this. This is just going to be very brief. Is hospitality should continue on both sides. If your vendor comes in, especially here in Vegas, and it's super hot, offer them a glass of water, vice versa. Hospitality should go both ways. Everybody should respect each other's time. There's tasting appointments that are optimal for a lot of people. Some people only want people to come in with an appointment, previously telling them what they're bringing in to make sure that it's worth both people's time for that meeting to occur. Some people don't care, and they're like, free reign to anybody, you can come in whenever you want. It is completely up to you how you set that up with your vendor. It's also really important to tell your rep what your program needs. If you kind of give them some ideas of how they can help you and in return help them, it makes both of your lives easier. If you know that you have a hole in your Cabernet section and you don't have any cab between $100 and $200, maybe you give them that need that you're looking for a Cabernet between $100 and $200, and it can bring you some options that would fit that hole. There's a lot of benefits to having a great relationship with your rep. I've had reps save my butt so much. One specific example was when I was so green. It was my first sommelier job. I got pushed into running a program before I knew really much of anything about wine, very much a learn in the fire moment. And I had a BEO, a banquet order, basically a group that bought out our restaurant. And I didn't see on there that they requested to have specific wines for their meal. And I was checking it. It was 2 days prior. I was checking on a Friday night for a Sunday banquet, and realized that I needed 10 cases of wine after hours on a Friday night. I texted my rep the next morning because I didn't want to text too late because they have to work in the mornings, and was like, hey, I totally messed up. I don't know how we can do it on a Saturday, but I need 10 cases of this wine for a party that I have coming in tomorrow. Is there anything I can do? And he's like, yeah, I'll go down to Will Call, pick it up for you, and I'll bring it to you. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And because of that one little thing that he did, and more things going down the line that he helped me just with in general, I would give him a lot of my business. And just as something as simple as that, just showing some compassion and some human decency goes a long way, both ways. Placement decency. So this is when you decide to put a wine by the glass. There's placement decency coming from both sides. One, that you should keep that wine by the glass for 6 months to a year is a decent amount of time when you are doing a by the glass placement. And on their side, they should be telling you if there's any stock or inventory issues. And if something is going out of stock or they can't get it back or there's a vintage change or things along those lines, they need to be open and communicating that with you. Also, perk expectations. This is something that doesn't really go well. It's not something that you learn. It's just something that kind of ends up happening and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't know, because no one really tells you this, is when you become the buyer, you get invited to a lot of things: lunches, dinners, enrichment trips, hockey games, all this other kind of stuff. And a lot of people don't realize that when you're getting these extra perks, they're kind of expecting something from you in return. So if you're going to lunch, you should be bringing in, or at least be interested in bringing in, the wine that you're going to lunch about, or going to that dinner. Or if they're taking you to a show or something like that, they're going to be expecting you to help them out in a hard time or to buy something from them. So just be prepared when you accept perks. Know that you are also saying that you are going to help them in return for them giving you that perk. Raphael, it's all about those great relationships. Yes, for sure. Great vendor relationships are just, even supplier relationships. Man, some of my great friends I met when they were a vendor or a supplier for me. So there's lots of great things can come from having a great relationship with your vendor, your distributor, your supplier, whoever they are. Lastly, education, passion, and advancement. So the sommelier, again, is the top service professional in that restaurant. They probably know more than everybody in that restaurant, maybe even combined, because again, the sommelier should have done every position, at least in the front of the house, before they became a sommelier, so they can be the most beneficial to the restaurant. Also, having back of the house relationships is really important, especially when you are in a food-driven restaurant, which sounds kind of silly. There's wine-driven restaurants and there's food-driven restaurants. But when you have a chef who really knows what they're doing, who does pairing menus and things like that, when you have a solid relationship with that chef, you learn from each other. When you sit down and a month prior to the new menu coming out, you guys sit down and you work on creating the best pairings you possibly can. It's one of the most magical things about being a sommelier, is when you have a good relationship with the chef in the back of the house. Next is training others, training your staff, training the servers, training your other sommeliers, training people to be able to do your job. And that sounds crazy, but the more people you can train to do your job, the better off you're going to be, the better off they are going to be for potential growth and advancement in their career. So if you can train someone to do your job, that gives you the ability to start to grow and to move into the next position that's going to be the most beneficial for your career. So a lot of people are so afraid to teach people to do what they can do that they get stuck in one place. And maybe that's great for some people, but for people who want to grow and want to learn more, it's really important to educate your staff and educate yourself as well. So even your servers, educate them about all the by the glass stuff, so they can talk to the guest who's not buying a bottle and you can talk to the guests who are buying a bottle. I had one sommelier I worked with when I was a server who would not talk to us at all about wine because he didn't want us to do his job. But there's a lot more sales opportunities that can happen when you educate your staff. All right. Any questions? That last part was fast, I know. I'm going to watch the questions screen come up as I start just to go over some final little notes. I mentioned in the very beginning that there are education plans, and if you have the industry education plan, you will have access to the live recording of this class. Again, it will take a couple weeks before it actually goes up onto the page, but it will be there at some point, and you will be able to go back and watch it as many times as you would like. The basic education plan is, these are both monthly subscriptions. It is a recurring monthly subscription that you can opt out of whenever you so choose. If you have the basic education plan, you get 25% off all classes. I'll send you a unique code that you get to use yourself to have 25% off of live classes. Plus you have access to grape guides, map resources, glossary, articles, tasting tools, book recommendations, website recommendations, and then the two types of courses that you have access to the live recordings are the wine basic courses and the sake courses. Sake courses will be coming at some point. I'm just focusing on wine right now and getting all the wine stuff built before I start building the sake side. For those of you who don't know, I only launched on the 2nd of this month, so still lots and lots to accomplish for the site, but we're moving. The industry education plan, you get 50% off all classes. It is an unlimited access to the site. You get all of the basic resources plus industry maps. I have about 300 maps that are for basically every wine region in the world that you can think of. They're either blank so you can fill them out yourself, or they're labeled so you can just color code how you want. And then there's also my maps that I drew specifically while I was studying for the master's exam is on there. Producer resources, vintage guides. I have the French vintage guides are releasing, I think it's next week they'll be releasing, either this week or next week, the French vintage guides will be releasing. And then actually, no, I think I have them up already. The French vintage guides are actually up already. And then the study guides are coming soon. Those are all the study guides that I created back when I was studying for the master's exam in 2017 and 2018. And then all classes, all live classes that were recorded, you will have access to the recordings of them. Okay, I see a question. Maria, when you get a discount on a bottle, which cost do you use for your cost of goods? Cost with the discount or cost without the discount? That's a great question. You want to use the actual cost that you paid, but you might want to notate in your formula what the original cost was. For your specific inventory, you need to know what you actually paid. But when you're pricing it, you might not want to use the price you paid. You might want to use the actual original cost. Again, that's completely up to you. But when you're trying to use that discount as a way for your company to earn more money in your program to be more profitable, you should use the original cost, not the discounted cost. That's a great question. So the education plans, the basic education plan is $10 a month. The industry education plan is $20 a month. We have 2 more classes this month, a viticulture focus session, which will be on Friday, and then a vinification focus session, which will be next Tuesday. I don't have October classes coming up yet. I actually just got the call yesterday that I'm coming off of furlough and I'll be going back to work in October. So classes are to be determined on how October is going to work. But once I know, I will put the schedule up and put more class options up for October. Any other questions that you have for me? I'm sorry, we went just a little bit over. If you think of a question that you forgot to ask, you are more than welcome to shoot me an email. You can email me through the site on the contact page, and just shoot your question in there, and I usually get back to any emails within 24 hours, if not sooner than that. All right, I'm not seeing anything else come up. So I appreciate you all. I hope you learned something today. I hope that math made a little bit of sense, but don't worry, you can come back and rewatch this once you purchase your industry plan, and you can keep practicing and practicing. At some point, I will also have practice examples up on the site. So you can just go in, again, it'll be the industry plan perk, but you can go in and download business of wine examples and work with those. Again, it'll take a little bit for me to put that up, but that is the plan. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you learned something today. I hope this was beneficial for you. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free just to reach out to me directly. Enjoy the rest of your day.